Fourth period zone, David Pagnotta. Got a nice little setup back there behind you. Everything new, looking fancy. What's going on, buddy?
It's good. So I can change the lights. This is how high tech this setup is here. I can change
Does the
colors and stuff.
does the red light actually go off, the little goal horn? Because that's pretty cool if you could have that thing kind of swirling
I,
around in your shot.
you know what? I've got to make sure, Colby, I can pull that off. Like we talk about something and somebody drops a certain line and brr, 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 brr,
Yeah.
brr, that'd be good. I'd like that. Yeah.
When
Okay.
when Dave breaks a trade, he's just going to be sitting there pressing the button for himself.
For
Uh,
just sitting by myself alone.
I want
Yeah.
to start with the Carolina Hurricanes. You know, an interesting team, off to a good start. You know, they're a team that always wants to be in the mix and kind of get over the hump. What do you think, or has there been any chatter around the Carolina Hurricanes and adding here?
Yeah, you know what? Or they're a team that we know the last couple of years they're not afraid to take a big swing. And great start to the season so far, obviously for them. They're still not afraid to take those big swings. They tried the Gensel thing 2 years ago. They tried Rantanen last year and then ended up flipping him for a good package in return. They go swinging this summer. They bring in Nick Ehlers. This is a team that's pretty pumped for this coming season. I talked to Sebastian Aho during the European media tour, and he was super pumped coming into the season about the team's chances and the fact that they went out again and basically at that time picked up the biggest fish that was available in Ehlers. My understanding is Eric Tulsky is not afraid to do it again. He's not afraid to go out there and look again. I don't think anything is close. Like I'm not anticipating anything happening anytime soon. But I do expect the Hurricanes to go out again this season and at the very least be engaged in those types of conversations for any of the big fish that may become available later on in the season. Whether it's a guy on an expiring deal again, or if it's somebody else with term, they're right there. They feel they're right there, and if there's another opportunity for them to pick somebody up to push them over the hump, I think Tulsky has every backing from up top to do whatever he needs to do to pull that off.
Yeah. Well, I think the Metro Division is one that is always interesting, and I think one of the places we always look is in goal when it comes to the Carolina Hurricanes, and do they finally kind of have that answer? And I want to stay in the Metro with you, and I hope Johnny's watching, because I want to talk to you about the New York Rangers and the issues that they're having. And we spent a good amount of time this morning talking about Brennan Othmann and why the New York Rangers aren't just going to let this guy go. I mean, which again, like, makes sense to me. Why are you going to let him walk out the door, potentially go have success somewhere else, and then you look like a fool unless there's a big name guy coming back the other way? But like, I look at Will Cooley and I look at Lafreniere on the wing, and I think about their goal scoring struggles. Like, what is Chris Drury going to do? Because you didn't bring Mike Sullivan in to be an okay team. You paid him a ton of money. Now you got to give them the weapons to go out and be a competitive team. And right now they just can't score enough to really compete at the high enough level.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. There's the struggles there are real, and it's they just don't know what their identity. Look, this is used all the time now, but they don't know their identity. They're trying to find what their identity really is. Everybody's utilizing that term right now, but in their case, it's totally valid. They're in flux. And, with a guy like Panarin, who's a UFA at the end of the year, with whatever direction this team is eventually going in, they have to make an internal decision as to what they want to do with him. Do you go out and try to hold on to him and add additional pieces? Can you this season? Or do you move him out, bring in young assets, bring in additional pieces? And this would be something later in the season anyway. But try to retool on the fly. Like, this is not a team that's going to go through a quasi rebuild like they did a number of years ago, where they kind of faked it, ended up getting Lafreniere first overall, and then decided to just keep adding. Like, this is a team that's going to have to be in a position where they got to. It's a retool. So depending on how this season goes, is Benajad going to be able to step up even more this season? Is Panarin? Are there other pieces on this club? How's Shesterkin going to do with some of the guys in front of him? Is he going to be able to bail them out in certain circumstances? Like, this is a team that, as you said, struggling to score. Can other pieces on this club step up in order to push them a little bit forward? Can they get into a consistent discussion of playoff contention? And if not, then yeah, Chris Drury has some serious questions that need to be answered. Do you go big fish hunting again in a different sense and look to make significant hockey-type blockbuster-esque moves by moving out key pieces in order to bring in additional key pieces or other key pieces? It's a tricky situation for the Rangers because you're right. They brought in Mike Sullivan to help push this team forward. Like with that ownership as well, that's just barking down at them. Like, fill up the building, get into contention, get us back into contender status and push for top spot, in the Metro. It's a big task. They don't know what management, I don't think knows exactly what they've got either. So there's a lot of different internal struggling that they need to do in terms of just visualizing exactly what path they want to take before they start making moves. Like they've got some on paper, some pieces there, boys, but it's just not gelling still.
So let me ask you this question then, kind of pointed. How many coaches does Chris Drury get to hire before we start looking at Chris Drury as maybe the guy who's not doing a good enough job? And Gerard Gallant, Peter Laviolette, now you're on to Mike Sullivan. He fired David Quinn, who was 10 games over 500 during a 3-year rebuild period. I think people forget that. And Jeff Gorton, mind you, two guys that there's a lot of connections to. And so like at what point is Dolan going, maybe the top of my leadership is not what it needs to be? There's been a lot of noise, Trouba, Kreider, how things have been handled, Barclay Goodrow, were they skirting the system with that move, with his connections to Mike Greer? Like, at what point are we having that conversation, about the Rangers?
There were some whispers, faint ones, but whispers over the summer that if Drury and company can't right this ship, at least going into obviously not this season, and at least not going into next season, if there's not a clear vision that, okay, we're finally on the right track, then Dolan may be looking to make something happen there. I think it's premature now still. I think they gave him, and he's got Drury has a good relationship, but I think there's at least an understanding that, look, buddy, you're getting close to the edge here. Either move forward or I'm just going to push you over.
I don't think that James Dolan is afraid of doing that either. We've seen, the way that the Rangers ownership group, obviously Nick's, the way that it's operated there. Final one for me coming up north of the border. I wanted to get to you on the Montreal Canadiens. They're a fun team to watch. Fans are loving them. They're one of my favorite teams to watch right now, but are we going to be watching for a contract extension soon for a certain defenseman?
Possibly. They're continuing to work on it with Mike Matheson on that back end. In the final year of his deal, local product. He loves playing there, loves being a part of it, loves being a mentor to some of the younger guys. Now, his game has changed, his responsibilities have changed with Hudson being in the mix, and obviously now the addition of Noah Dobson. He can be a little bit more responsible as a two-way type of defenseman versus putting up the 60 whatever points it was a couple years ago and almost 40 last year. He can be relied upon to be that steady guy who can contribute offensively, and he's off to a decent start with 4 points. But that's the key right there, is the 24-05. If he can eat up minutes on that back end and help out some of the younger guys along the way, that's where the value really comes into play for Marty St. Louis and Kent Hughes and company in Montreal. They had dialogue over the summer. They re-engaged in that in preseason, and they're going back and forth right now. It's an open line of communication. He'd like to stay. The Habs would like to do it, but how does that work? Are we talking about a 3-4 year extension? He's 31 going on 32. Are we talking about $6-7 million per year? Does he want a little bit more? Will you reduce it if you extend on term? He's making $6.25 right now with his bonus as well. So for this particular season, and I think last, was pretty much the same amount, even though his cap hit's a little bit lower. But I think he wants to be in that range, in that 6 to 7 range, depending again on term. I think the Habs would be comfortable there, depending on how the term looks. So we'll see kind of where that goes. I know that they're going to go back and forth. There's not much of a concern on either side to really try to get something or rush something. And the other guy to look at there, Patrick Laine as well, UFA at the end of the season. They had talks in the summer. They rekindled those a little bit in preseason, but I think everybody's in a wait-and-see mode with Laine. before they determine what path to take with him. Read between the tea leaves or the lines or whatever. He's got to produce, and perhaps a little bit more on the more 5-on-5 versus the power play. And if you could do that consistently, then I think those talks will start to pick up. But that's a wait and see mode right now.
Anything else you want to get off your chest, buddy? You okay?
No, listen, it's always great to hear from you. Oh, yeah. I thought you were asking me if I had another question. Yeah. Is there any other topics you feel like we're missing out on here?
Well, I mean, Craig Berube is a little pissed off in Toronto with how his first line is doing and the juggling that's going on there. I mean, you kind of saw that coming. Like they didn't bring in anybody that was going to be consistent on that right side. Obviously, you're not replacing a 102-point player in Mitch Marner. But Michelli finally got on the board, second line role, but he finally got on the board yesterday by potting in a goal. They were waiting for him to produce. They had Cowan up there. They've had Domi up there. They've mixed guys around. But you heard him last night. You heard him this morning talking about how a little bit frustrated he's starting to get with the lack of consistent production from Nyes, Matthews, and fill in the blank because they still can't figure it out. I know they'd like to do something, but just with this team, with their proximity to the cap and just how they have like 75 bottom six forwards, I don't know how they're going to be able to finagle something this season in terms of making an impact move, but that's not going to stop Treliving from exploring.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting there. Toronto's just got so many forwards, and they just can't find one guy to play on that top line. It's wild.
Yeah, I thought they were going to give Cowan a little bit of runway here, and I guess they're, kind of like he didn't play last night, he didn't play the night before, yeah. So I don't know if it's a little tough love right now. But somebody's got to fill in.
Yeah.
Look, I agree with you. I saw him a couple times in the press box last night, just kind of pacing back and forth. So he's itching to get in there. But I mean, again, give him that runway, give him some time, like give him a 10-game stretch to see if he can build something.
Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.